Blog Talk Radio.
Dasamati Nandana Brajabadanagara Gokula Ranjana Kana.
Greetings. Welcome to the Vedic Perspective. I'm your host, Ralph Lorino. Today we'll be delving into some important issues regarding spirituality and mankind. So today we see around us a lot of wickedness, a lot of decadence, dishonesty, corruption, bribery, nepotism. So everyone is wondering, why are these things occurring? Why is this so rampant in the society? And especially there's a lot of bad messages being sent to children about sexuality and exploitation and viewing each other as objects rather than sacred beings. So we're going to look for some answers in the ancient scriptures of India. Especially today we'll be looking at the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now a person may ask, well, what is the Srimad Bhagavatam and why is it important? Why should we be examining this knowledge? After all, we're modern, this was written so long ago. What relevancy does it really have to us today? Well, it's very interesting with the Srimad Bhagavatam in that the Vedas, the Vedic literature, means absolute knowledge, or knowledge that is infallible. And this knowledge was compiled 5,000 years ago by Srila Vyasadeva, who was one of the great figures in literary history. But after compiling the Vedic literature, Srila Vyasadeva realized that due to the effects of the current age, known as the age of Kali, that men and women would not be so inclined to philosophical study, and the Vedic literatures are so very voluminous. How would they be able to sit down with a calm mind and read them in a systematic and scientific way? It would be very difficult for them. So then he decided to divide the Vedas into four, so that people could kind of have smaller bites to chew on. And then we get the four different Vedas. Then after that, he decided that it would be best to have some kind of explanation of the Vedas. And therefore we get the Puranas and the Upanishads, which are also written by Srila Vyasadeva. And also we have the great epic histories of India, such as the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which were also written by Srila Vyasadeva. Still, Vyasadeva realized in this age, even though he had done so much to make it palatable and possible for people to imbibe the knowledge of the Vedic literatures by first dividing them into four, then writing explanations about them, then compiling the knowledge in the form of histories so that people could both be entertained and educated at the same time, that there was still something missing. So then he wrote down a summary study of the Vedic literatures, which is called the Vedanta Sutra. So the Vedanta Sutra is a very encapsulated version of the Vedic literatures, almost like you might say a code form, in that it's much shorter and it's much more concise. But even after doing all this, Srila Vyasadeva still felt disheartened and that something was missing. And so he spoke with his teacher, Sri Narada Muni. And Narada, after questioning him a bit, found that there was still something missing, even in the Vedanta Sutra, in that it did not directly help people to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore it was still lacking in the most important essence of the Vedic literatures, in that it would be possible for people to get to know and to understand the Supreme Person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, it's called the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not God, because actually there's more than one in the ultimate issue. There's two, male and female. So that's important to keep in mind, that we're speaking about Godhead, not just a single male God, but actually a divine couple who have, just like as we see in this world, that when couples get together, that they're able to create. They can create new life. And this is kind of a fractal representation as we move up the scale universally, and we get to the ultimate issue, that there is a divine couple, and their powers together create the universe, create all the living entities. So this is why we refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Srila Vyasadeva could understand that, yes, that Narada Muni was correct, that he had not fulfilled the function of the Vedas completely, because after so much philosophical discourse and understanding of the impersonal features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he had not really given the substantial knowledge of actually who and what is Godhead, what are their attributes, etc. So then he decided to compile the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is known as the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is a natural commentary on the Vedic literatures by the author himself. So this is the distilled essence of Vedic knowledge in its most concise, loving, and personal form. And it also helps us to get to understand who and what and what attributes the Supreme Personality of Godhead contains. Just like sometimes we see that they go out onto the street and they question people nowadays, and they say, okay, this and that, and then they say, well, who is the president? We see oftentimes that people don't even know who the president of the country is or the vice president. So thinking people, and most people still take that to be as a bad sign, that we're supposed to be citizens of the nation and we're involved in a republic or a democracy, so we should know who our leaders are, what their agenda is, and what they're up to. And if you don't even know the name of the president, then you're taken to be kind of a nonsense person who isn't really taken very seriously, because you're not fulfilling your function as a citizen. So in the same way, if we purport to be adherents or followers of any particular religion or spiritual movement, or that we're advancing on some path of enlightenment, but yet we still don't understand what are the attributes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that way, and this is what Vyasadeva was feeling, that he had not taught fully, in that way, if we're not coming to understand those attributes of the Supreme Persons, then we're lacking in our duty, whether we call it our duty to our religion or to our spiritual path or whatever belief system that we might hold, that if we don't understand ultimately what the ultimate issue is, then we're kind of like a nonsense personality, in that we don't really know the ultimate goal. So this is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to give to mankind, is the knowledge of the ultimate destination of all religious programs and all spiritual programs. So I had read previously some parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially because we're broadcasting today from the Protect a Cow Farm Sanctuary. We're focusing on the parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam that have to do with the protection of cows and all other animals, and that as a jumping off point to understand this philosophy and how it relates to modern day affairs and how it relates to some very important historical occurrences. So I'm going to go ahead, and the program will be that I will read the text and the purport by Bhaktivedanta Swami. Now, another important point of the Vedic literature is that it was written down 5,000 years ago, but actually it goes back many, many, many more thousands of years before that. So this is a very ancient knowledge. But the unique feature of Vedic literature is that it has an unbroken line of teachers for the past 5,000 years, culminating in Bhaktivedanta Swami. So this is one of the few ancient knowledge paths that is still living, that still has an unbroken line of teachers. And we may like it, we may not like it, but the point is that through the line of teachers and ultimately culminating in Bhaktivedanta Swami, we can understand the essence of the Vedas. You may decide you don't like it, or you may decide that you love it, but at least we can understand it as it is, without speculation, whereas in many other ancient writings and ancient doctrine, the line of teachers has died out long ago, and there's so much bewildering speculation going on as to what is the true meaning of some of these ancient disciplines and some of these ancient paths. What is the actual purport is very difficult to understand, because there is no one who is actually a participant or follower in the line that can explain it to us at this point. So the Vedic literatures are also important in the sense that we do have current representatives that can explain the Vedic literatures to us so we can decide for ourselves whether this knowledge is relevant to our day-to-day lives or is something we want to incorporate into our path of beliefs or spiritual knowledge. So it has several remarkable features in that we're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the distilled essence of the Vedic knowledge, especially focusing on understand the qualities and attributes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're going to read the ancient texts. We're going to hear a purport by the most recent link in the chain of ancient masters, who is current to this day. And then also I'll be interjecting some of my own personal viewpoints as a student of this knowledge for many years, and also coming from the Western paradigm and the American paradigm. I can give some insight to people who are interested in this knowledge, in the sense that, you know, I'm one of us. I you know, come from America. I've been studying this for a long time, so I may have some insights that may make it more understandable to people. So we were reading last time Canto 1, Chapter 17 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the punishment and reward of Kali. So one may ask at this point, who is Kali? Well, Kali is the personification of quarrel. We live now in the age of Kali, which started 5,000 years ago, which can be considered kind of the winter of the seasons, of the cycles of time, in that our spiritual potencies are somewhat diminished, our understanding of Godhead is somewhat diminished, and there's much more quarrel, there's much more hypocrisy. It's also known as the age of iron. And Kali is the personification of this age. And this theme has been also picked up in other religions as what you might call in the Christian paradigm, Satan, or in the Islamic paradigm, Jinn. So Kali is kind of the original personality that all these themes of the other religions are based on. He's the personification of quarrel, of enviousness. So it is an actual person, but he's embodying a theme of this age, which is quarrel and hypocrisy. So Maharaj Parikshit has come across a scene in this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam where he comes across a cow and a bull that have been beaten. And he sees that Kali is the one that has beaten them. And he's come upon the scene to try to inject some righteous justice into the matter. In previous ages, these things were not current. The killing of animals, the exploitation of women and children. It's only since the age of Kali that these things have become prominent. And this is at the very dawn of this age, 5,000 years ago. Perhaps we could say it's somewhere in Afghanistan that this scene was taking place. Somewhere where Maharaj Parikshit, although he was the emperor of this is also at odds with current archaeological and sociological theory. The theory of the Vedas, or the proof in the Vedas, is that up to 5,000 years ago, the entire world was united in one world. And the government was very righteous, and all types of bad elements were kept out by the government. This is proved in different ways. We can see, like, why are there pyramids all around the entire earth, from places as far distant as Mexico, to India, to Egypt, to Europe, to America? Why was this kind of building structure taken up by the inhabitants of all these different places when the current theory is that they had no connection to one another? Well, the Vedas dispute that. They say that all the civilizations of the past were united, and not just in any kind of regular government, but in a perfected government, where the leaders were righteous, the citizens were peaceful and happy and prosperous, and there were advanced technologies. Just like, you know, it's very difficult for us to understand nowadays how all these ancient monolithic creations, such as the pyramids and the pyramids of Mexico and Stonehenge and all these other, there's so many numerous monolithic Stonehenge-like edifices around the world in all kinds of remote places, how these stones were moved, how these things were accomplished by people who supposedly didn't even have the wheel or knowledge of iron or ironworking or any kind of sophisticated machinery. But the Vedas refute this theory in that they say that the technologies of the past were very advanced, and also because the people were also very spiritually advanced, they had certain yogic powers which would make what is seemingly impossible today to do would be very easy to do in the past.